How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. How are you, Matt?
Man, life is good. Thank you so much for coming in and hanging out with us. What an
I'm glad
honor.
to be here. Thanks for the invite.
What an honor, man. And we've got some of our young men and men from around the world that join us live here too. So you and I will chat it up a bit. They'll come in for some Q&A and just a really fun hour, man. So again, really, really excited about this. Can you remind me where you are in the world?
I'm in Santa Rosa Beach, Florida. I'm just outside Eglin
Okay.
Air Force Base.
Okay. All right. Beautiful. So we're both, yeah, both East Coasting. Um, so
Third coast.
third, there it is. That's right. That's right. Um, Man, I got to tell you. So this is I love how things come together. So I saw you on a billboard, and I don't remember what it was for. Do you know you're on billboards? Do you know? Because I saw you on a billboard somewhere, and my 9-year-old young man goes, "Man, I'll bet that guy is super tough." Those are the words that come out of his mouth. And I don't know where, and I'm trying to remember where this was. And I go, man, I think he is. And then literally like a week later, I see you on my friend Ryan Mickler's podcast.
I don't know if I've ever made it to a billboard.
So that's
But
what I was very interested because it went up, and I'm not gonna I went up in my hometown in North Carolina, and it came back down within a day or so. And so
huh.
this could be a product of I'm an old man and I'm hallucinating, but this was up and then it was back down. And then I see you on Mickler's show, and I go, man, I gotta connect and learn more about this guy's story. So yeah, super interesting. So there's that. But I want to take these guys on a journey of Aaron Hale and get to know you and get to know your work. Um, and do you mind giving, I know you've told this story 1,000 times, man, but just a 30,000 foot overview of you. And I like to go with these young men here, go you as you're a 12-year-old, 13-year-old, 14-year-old young buck. Who is this young guy? What does he have all figured out? And then we'll kind of take everybody through a journey.
Well, I've got a 14-year-old myself, and I keep thinking back to when I was that age. I I keep thinking what an idiot that kid was. Yeah,
Same,
I
same.
was the all-American slacker. I definitely did not have it all figured out when I was in my teens. In fact, I was a very late to mature.
Sure.
That's kind of a bonehead. Uh, I had enough natural talent and ability, and peppered in a little BS, and I got by without having to really work hard at anything. But it was like B, C, effort. I
Mhm.
did, that's kind of how I cruised by, my teens and even into my early 20s. When I went to college, I had no ambition,
Yeah.
no direction. Uh, and yeah, in fact, I went to college thinking, I was looking for Animal House.
Yes, sir.
That's the
Yeah.
kind of experience I wanted.
Yes, sir.
And, and I created it for myself. I joined a fraternity, and there were plenty of guys in the fraternity that were getting excellent grades. There were model students, model brothers, not me. I was that other guy. And soon enough, I gained my freshman 50, and I'd I'd forgotten where my classes were.
Yeah.
So I found it was kind of a mutual thing. The university and I realized that we were not a good match, and they invited me to leave.
Got it.
Uh, so it was definitely one of those swift kick in the pants type of things. Those um the what they call the pivot point. The come to Jesus
Yeah.
moment. Just sheer embarrassment.
Yeah.
Just shame. Yeah,
Yeah.
so I had to figure out how was I going to get these internal skills, values, standards, work ethic, ambition, pride in a day's work and accomplishment. And also, how was I going to get that tuition money back that I just pissed away?
Sir.
So, and I absolutely knew my entire life, and I would never. be in the military until about a month before I walked into a recruiter's office.
Join the military. Is would you that thank you for framing it like that too. All of those lessons of ambition and you know, moving forward and gaining skills and acquiring those things. Um, the the acquisition of that, the desire to acquire that for a young man, how do we build that for these young guys without having to jump back into the shame part, without having to be embarrassed, without having to, like, that is something I feel like we've talked a lot about lately is these rock bottom moments for so many of us as grown men who go, this is when
Hmm.
I finally turned it around and started to be this disciplined individual and somebody that was at least striving towards a purpose. You've got a 14-year-old now. So how are you going? All right, man, here's where I was at 14. Here's what I had to go through, that embarrassment first. I want to
Hmm.
get you ahead of this. How are you parenting him different to try to avoid that?
No, that's the thing is that it, we're afraid to try and fail.
Mm,
And even before trying and failing, you got to know what to try at. I remember it so distinctly, and of course, hindsight, right? Looking at all of these other guys, they were accomplishing, they were star athletes, and they were getting, the 4.0s, the 4.2s, they're like the AP
right.
guys, and they were accomplishing these awesome things, and they had it all put together, and I couldn't figure out how they were doing that
Mm,
and happy, and I was gaining weight, I was depressed. And all I wanted to do was sit around and play some video games,
mm,
and just kind of hang out with my slacker buddies that were not doing that, they're doing the same thing I was doing. And then I would look back at those guys and the guys that were, they had it put, together. And just I was confused. I was like,
yeah.
why can't I do that? And it just for some reason did not dawn on me that I actually had to work at those goals, set the goals, figure out, backtrack. If I wanted to get the muscles, if I wanted to lose the weight, if I wanted to get the grades, if I wanted to make a little money, I actually had to do A, B, and C every single day.
That's right.
But it just I didn't connect the dots
Yeah.
until way later. And
Yeah.
now I've got a teenager of my own. I've got 6-year-old identical twin boys because of course I can't be the only one who's confused.
That's right.
Uh, and I got to figure out how to help them, not tell them, but help them figure out how to connect those dots earlier on.
Yeah.
And it's definitely a challenge.
Yeah, it is. But good on you though. I love that. So then you figured the military, which you would never, you know, you knew you were never going into. Did somebody connect those dots for you and go, hey, maybe this is the next path? Or is that something you came to that conclusion on your own after all of this, going, hey, maybe they're going to help me connect the dots? Was that guided or was that just like, nope, Aaron goes, all right, man, this is going to be the path?
Actually, the military made it real easy. They said, here's what you got to do, figure it out. And anytime I reached a level, a positional job,
Mm,
a rank, whatever it might be, as soon as I started feeling slightly comfortable in that new position, that's when they changed it on me. They pushed me forward.
mm,
I never received a single promotion or advancement or anything like that uh, when I felt I was ready.
mm,
So I needed the nudge in the military. It started as soon as I got to basic training. In the berthing, the big long berthing with the bunk beds and all
mm,
that. They lined us all up along, the racks on either side, and everyone's at attention. And then the RDCs, the Navy's version of drills, they had said, "Who here? Raise your hand. Who here has any college experience?" Me
mm.
and
Yeah.
one other raised their hands, and they said, "You too, front and center." and we compared notes, and I had maybe a couple credits more than the other guy. Guess who was in charge? Which recruit was in charge of the entire company? This guy. I'm like, no way. And then they asked me, what rate are you going to be? What MOS? What's the job you sign up for? I said, cook. Like, oh, God help us. We put a cook in charge of the division here.
Huh.
Uh, but that was my first taste. But it was always like that. I didn't want the job. I wasn't ready for the job, but I had to fill that chevron. I had to
Well,
fill that position.
I read something recently. Somebody said, ready is not a condition, it's a decision. And I like that. And it kind of outlines right there, like we want to pretend like we get to decide, okay, now we're ready for whatever this next thing is. Now we're ready to be a parent. Now we're ready to, start the business. Now we're ready to fill in the blank. And that's not a condition where we've done all these, checked all the boxes, and so now you are just floating into this next level of responsibility. It's that decision to step into the next level of responsibility and push through and figure it out along the way. So it sounds like that that experience kind of mimics that a little bit. So it doesn't sound like you stayed a cook.
I love cooking.
Yeah,
My whole family, my mom's side, very creative, very
yeah,
artistic,
yeah,
sketch artists, painters, chalk artists, watercolors, all that kind of stuff. Me, my creative gene led me into the kitchen,
yeah.
and loved to cook. And though I really didn't have a whole lot of direction, I kind of looked at my talents, my abilities, my interests, and that during that decision-making period during the military, I'd said, okay, I'll international business at Bowling Green State University didn't really work out because I like to travel, and business sounded so general that who knows. That's why I picked that major. But I love to cook, so why not become a chef? And that was basically why I chose mess management specialist, later culinary specialist, as my rate in the Navy. And the 4 years later, I was personal chef to a three-star admiral and the
Oh,
commander
cool.
of the Sixth Fleet in Gaeta, Italy. I spent 4 years
How cool.
in Italy. It was hardship during, definitely it was not,
Yeah.
but it was amazing. It was awesome.
How awesome is that? Okay, so then what is the transition into? Because if it serves me correctly, if I did the research right, you spent about 14 years in the military. Is that correct?
14 years total in the
Okay.
military, more or less. Uh, about eight of those in the Navy.
Okay, got it. So take us through, if you don't mind, take us through as you went. How did it get into EOD? How did that transition take place?
Well, I enlisted when I first came into the military. I was 99. It was time of peace, and I definitely did not want to be handed a rifle and sent into the
Yeah,
desert.
yeah,
That's or the jungle or something like that. That was not my speed. I had long hair. I wore moccasins to high school. I mean, I was like a hippie kid.
yeah,
Um, but the last thing I wanted to do was you'll be like a combat arms type of guy. But I picked up the Navy over a couple of years. I picked up those internal skills I talked about, and I accidentally picked up the extrinsic, the external values. That duty,
yeah,
sense in the honor in the teamwork, service to my country, the president, all of that, but more so the guys and gals to my left and right, to the Navy, all of that. I've really picked up that sense of honor, and soon found myself in. I was on the flagship. We did our figure eights in that box in the Mediterranean, but I was watching both wars, Iraq and Afghanistan, on the TV, Fox News, CNN. That's how I was connected,
yeah,
besides being a cook to the admiral. But by that time, I'd gained a rank, responsibility. I was doing I was doing collateral duties outside of the command staff, and I loved it. And I actually felt a draw, a deep desire to actually serve with these new skills and values, all of that, external, internal. I felt that all of that, I could better serve the military, the war, the cause better as doing something else, more kinetic, more connected to the battle.
Yeah.
So I volunteered to deploy to Afghanistan. Of course, I was still a Navy cook, but I
Yeah.
went from cooking for the Admiral in 35 of his top brass to cooking for I was running an Army DFAC, a chow hall on a FOB, a PRT in Afghanistan, and you cook it for 700 ISAF, the NATO troops.
Got it.
Funny enough, there was a couple platoons of Italian Special Forces there. I got to practice the lingo I learned in Italy out in Afghanistan. And we had pizza day where they would come into the kitchen and we'd cook on big loaves of naan as a pizza dough. But I was there on the battlefield, and that's when I met some EOD technicians. And they had their armored truck and they dumped out all of their equipment to do maintenance checks one day in the parking lot. And they had the bomb suit and the robots and all that EOD stuff. It was like a cool guy yard sale. And I guess, struck a conversation with these guys, learned about the tight-knit brotherhood, learned about um, the technical aspect, the challenge and the role in the job, and the fact that they're first responders on the battlefield.
Yeah.
Everything about that job, it just it was like that bell, that something ringing in the back of my mind that said, "This is what I was meant to do." So I applied, I put in a request to switch from cook to EOD technician in the Navy, and they promptly sent it back denied. I guess they liked
Mm.
my cooking too much.
Yeah. It's so
I tell people when I got my first confirmed kill with an egg roll, I decided to start saving lives instead.
that's awesome. So how do you push it for those with we have some, I know we have some military guys here that are live with us too, but for the non-military guys, if it comes back denied like that, how do you push through on something like that and go, no, I really want that. Like what's the pushback and the timeline on that for you?
But there everything is waiverable. Like
Got it.
if you put in a request, if you pound on the right people's desk.
Sure.
I did not realize this.
Yeah.
So when they said no, uh, and there were a lot of things uh, uh, working against me. For one, my rate and rank, my job and that rank and that job were undermanned. So I
Mhm.
was kind of glued to that, and they didn't want to promote me either.
Right.
Plus, EOD in the Navy wasn't an actual uh, rate. It was more like a special qualification where other source rates could be qualified as.
Got
Like
it.
infantry guy with the jump wings.
Got
You
it.
could be like a hull technician or electrician or a bosun's mate with EOD, the EOD badge in the Navy at the time, but they weren't taking cooks into the program. Uh, Almost the same time, they changed that to make it a rate and a job all in itself. But nobody told me.
Gotcha.
And anyways, uh, by the time my first deployment to Afghanistan was over, my contract was coming to an end with the Navy. So I just let my contract expire instead of re-enlisting. I went over to the Army recruiter, handed them my service record, and said, "Hey, I had 8 strong years as a Navy petty officer. I want to come in and become an EOD technician." Of course, this was 2007, 2008 timeframe. Very busy.
Yeah.
Uh, the Army could definitely use more EOD technicians, especially in Iraq. Actually, yeah, both leaders. But the Army was like, welcome.
Yeah.
And so I changed uniforms, I changed jobs, and I spent about a year training to become a bomb technician.
EOD. Got it. Okay, cool. Thank you for laying that out. So, I, I don't want to dive into this any further than you want to dive in, but I'd love to at least give an overview of the moment, that life changed even more, and not the headline part of it, but the internal moment, right? When everything you think you are, gets stripped away, and then there's that
Hmm.
darkness, the literal and the emotional darkness, and kind of the questions you're asking yourself, and we love to dive into that, especially with these young men present, so we can um we can learn from amazing humans who have pushed through these things. But I always like to dive into like that
Hmm.
literal emotional darkness. So you mind taking us back as far as you're willing, into that moment that kind of shifted everything?
Sure. Well, I joined the Army. I went to the training to be an EOD technician. I deployed once to Iraq, and I came back to Afghanistan in 2011, this time as an EOD team leader. And that's the guy that actually gets in the bomb suit and makes the long walk, the
Right.
lonely walk,
Right.
because you want the highest ranking guy on, on the scene to actually do the job. So the team leader, he gets in the bomb suit. I just come back. We were eight months into this deployment of 12-month rotation, and I just come back from a 2 weeks of R&R leave back home. Got to see my firstborn turn one. Got to see the whole family at the Thanksgiving table. It was the best last page in the photo album. But I still had my travel like luggage in the back of the truck. My team picked me up in our armored truck and jumped into a supply convoy to go from Kandahar, where I'd flown in, out to our area of operation. And uh, on the way, the patrol leader of the convoy called back and said they found something in the road. We need you to take a look at it. I wasn't even on duty, but there is no such thing as on duty, off duty when you're in the battlefield. What am I going to say? This isn't my job.
Yeah.
There's like the guy, the QRF guy down the road, and we'll wait for him. No, they just say okay, and
Yep.
they set up the security quota, and I threw a luggage off the robot out of the truck, and got to work. And anyways, we took care of the IED they found, but there was
Mm,
another one nearby that they hadn't seen, and it wasn't
mm,
discovered until uh, it detonated. It hit me in the face. Um, it cracked my skull. It took my eyes. These are prosthetics,
yeah.
and Um, sent me right back to Kandahar and right back to the States. 48 hours later, I was at Walter Reed Medical Center in Bethesda, Maryland. I was in the hospital room. The lights were out and they were going to stay out forever. And I was going through all those things like why
Sure.
me? Why
Sure.
me? Why did it have to? I trained. I was so mad. I was mad at the army. I was mad at that convoy. The patrol leader. I was mad at everybody,
Sure.
uh, but especially myself because I'd let everybody down. I trained hard. I was the team leader. I was the expert, and it was such a low technology thing that got me.
Mm.
And yeah, I was just mad, and all those things, all the like you were talking about the questions, I call
Yeah.
them the demons, the voice in the back of my head that said, you know, what if I'd done something differently? What if I'd
Yeah.
gone this way, walked that way, or used a different tool, or uh, and then it was all that talk like I can't be an EOD tech anymore. I can't be a soldier anymore. I can't be a dad or a husband. I can't. I can't ever drive a car again. I can't what I can't live. I can't be a
Yeah,
man.
yeah, yeah. I mean, and I don't see how anybody wouldn't go through that those series of questions like that. How long did you allow yours? Because I talked to I remember gosh, who was it?
Well, the
Uh,
truth is, it didn't take me too long.
to go
Um,
through that to go through that series to kind of get to push through that to let yourself be mad. You didn't how long did you sit in that?
you gotta deal with it. You
Yeah,
have to. You gotta chew on it for a little bit. And uh, it was, I'm embarrassed to say how textbook the stages of grief were for me. But
sure.
as soon as I realized what I was doing and what was going on, and one of the things, there's so many lessons learned, so many, but one of them being that whenever I'm feeling depressed or down or angry or frustrated, cornered, hopeless, usually I'm thinking about myself too
Hmm.
much.
Hmm.
Usually I'm thinking about the things that I cannot change too
Hmm.
much. You know, yes, I lost my eyes. I lost my eyesight. It sucks. And I had to mourn that loss. I
Hmm.
had to go through the stages of grief. And like I said, it was textbook. I went through all of them. But the things that I had on my side were a strong support network with my
Hmm.
family, my blood family, my military family. I realized that I was in this hospital full of heroes, full of these warriors. I don't like saying wounded warrior. It sounds like a victim.
Hmm.
I like recalibrated carnivore,
Yeah.
re-engineered expert.
Oh, man.
But but they were all these Janes and Joes were they were fighting their own personal battles.
Hmm.
They were doing it. They'd lost limbs. They've gotten TBI. They were suffering through this, the same, not maybe not the exact same fight I was, but who was I to say that my pain, my
Hmm.
loss was the best excuse for quitting, or even a good excuse. So I don't have a monopoly on pain.
Yeah.
Mine might be unique, but it's not all that unique, really.
Good.
Nobody knows exactly what I'm going through. They're, pain, suffering,
Yeah.
sacrifice. It's pretty universal.
Man, I love all of that so much. When you are taking a look at coming out of those last stages of grief, if you as you're looking back at because I want to also give these guys an overview of all the things that you have done and created and built and the ways that you've continued to serve and lead since then because it's you're doing more than most men, period, full stop, end of story, right now. So but as you come out of that, you come out of those last stages of grief, how much of from that time to to the Aaron Hale that we have now, how much of that do you look at and go, okay, this was a rebuild of who I want to be versus a like a revisit of who I've always been. You know what I mean? And just kind of a construction, right? Is there, do you look at that and go, okay, there's a bit of me that I've intentionally built because of, or is it I just got back to who I was in spite of? Which one of those plays out more for you think?
It comes, we actually we're coming full circle to me back not knowing, not
Yeah,
connecting the dots, right?
yeah, yeah.
And not doing like, here's where I want to go. Here's what I want to do. And what do I need? Reverse engineer that to what do I need to do today? All right. And I was still in the hospital, undergoing the surgeries and all that kind of stuff. And they taught me how to use, be a blind person. I went to blind rehabilitation, and learn to use the cane, the accessible tools like talking, the text-to-speech phone, computer, like
Yeah.
how I'm able to talk to you today. And I started looking up things like how do I do stuff? right? How
Yeah.
do I get outside? I don't want to be trapped inside. I don't want to be stuck. I don't want to get fat and on the couch this time, not by choice, but by like confined by my disability. I was terrified of that because I know how depressing that feels. And I
Mhm.
did not. So I wanted to get outside. I want to run. I want to frolic and play. I want, but so I looked up who like blind plus outdoors, blind plus, and the thing was, there was plenty of people that were already doing this. Eric Weinmeier is the first blind man to ever climb Mount Everest. So I looked him up and I went mountain climbing with him. I didn't blaze a new trail. I just followed somebody and rode some coattails. And Lonnie Bedwell, another Navy guy, first blind person to kayak the entire Grand Canyon solo. One man, one boat, and paddle. And he had guides and all of that. He had a team, but there was nobody in the boat steering that for him except him. And you know what? I looked him up. I went kayaking with him. I did whitewater with that. That's some scary stuff. This is coming from a bomb tech.
Oh,
Uh,
that's
but
terrifying.
that's what I did. And I started running because it's really hard to find a mountain to train on in Florida.
Yeah.
But I started running, and somebody convinced me to, sign up for a marathon. I'd actually registered for 4 marathons within the span of 4 months, and I'd never run anything longer than a 10K in my life.
Wow.
So I got to figure out how to do that. I got a coach tell me how to do it, and I connected the dots. And I started training every single day. I had a plan. I had a workout schedule, and it was the same thing. And what you were talking about, like, how did I accomplish more? How am I accomplishing more now than I, might have before losing my eyesight? Is because those skills, those the core values, the standards, that being thrust into something kind of like the Navy did in the beginning, thrust me
Yeah.
into a challenge that I might not have been ready for, and then I work my butt off to fit the role. It's kind of like, registering
Yeah.
for a marathon and work my butt off to become a marathon runner.
I love it.
So that's what I did.
Yeah.
And, 4 years after the bomb blast, I contracted bacterial meningitis. I lost my hearing. I went right back to the hospital. It almost killed me. I almost died a second time. And I had to start all over from scratch. This time, not just blind, but pulling the full Helen Keller because I
Yep.
was totally deaf too. And it was like, okay, I'd done this before. I can do it again. And it was a whole another process, just like the first time with the stages of grief, and I went through all of that. But the whole time it was, how do I do this? Instead of I can't, it's like how can I? And then I added that piece to it at the end was how can I so I can teach others? If
Yeah.
I'm going to go through this, at least I can light the way. I can say, here's the path I took. Because there's one thing that has been emblazoned in my mind. I've probably read it in a meme somewhere, but it says, someday the story of your struggle might be the blueprint for someone else's survival.
I love that. Yep.
So I try to write the blueprint every day.
Responsibility right there, man. And so I'm assuming was that same. I love how you framed that too, of getting thrust in to a position and then working to figure that out. Was it the same for the kind of the entrepreneurial venture and point of impact and the with the podcast and the speaking and all that? Was that the same, or was there something else that added to that, or was that just like this is the next step, this is what makes sense, this is
Well,
how I go serve?
after it would be almost a year from going deaf to being able to have a conversation with another person. It was the
Mm,
cochlear implants, because these are still turned off to this day. This
yeah.
is not a hearing aid up here. It actually sends a digital signal with this magnet to the implant in my head.
Wow.
And uh, so it took a long time.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting there at my breakfast bar, totally blind, totally deaf, locked, trapped inside my body. During the whole COVID lockdown period, and everybody's complaining about being so lonely and isolated. I'm like, welcome
Right.
to my world, people.
Yeah, right. Right.
But I was sitting there, trying to figure out what to do. And I did what anybody in my situation would. I started a chocolate company. Uh,
Naturally, naturally.
I fell back on what I did know, and I could cook. And
Yeah.
the Thanksgiving is a recurring theme in my life. Thanksgiving was coming up, so I decided to just make a huge Thanksgiving feast, and I started making desserts and pies and everything like weeks in advance, and just freezing them till the day. And I started making batch after batch after batch of fudge. I kind of went crazy because I was having fun,
Yeah.
and it was something I could do. And instead of focusing on what I couldn't do, like, all right, I've been crying or I've been, angry about this for long enough. I actually got bored and I needed something to do. So what could I do? And I started cooking. Um, it kind of snowballed into eodfudge.com. I started a fudge company. And then it's just one of those things. It's momentum. Like you recently had Chip Higgins talking about the physics of energy,
Yes,
uh,
sir.
and and it was just, I like to call it, and forgive me, I call it Newton's first law of kicking ass. It's
I like I
um,
like
it's
it.
it's an inertia. If you take one step and you take another, you start building that inertia. And I started, just with cooking, but I was doing something. And I'd actually lost my vestibular balance, the inner ear balance, when I lost my hearing. So I
Right.
couldn't even go for a run with my buddies anymore, or get on the treadmill. Because it was like somebody's trying to steal the whole thing out from under me. But I got on the treadmill and I held on for dear life with a G.I. Joe Kung Fu grip. And I just hit the quick start, like half a mile an hour. I would just walk. It was what I could do. And I
Yeah.
just tacked on each day a little progression, that 1% change every single day. I used the trekking poles that used to take in the mountains. And I was doing this weird, like daddy long leg crab walk where they were both like crutches and, feelers. And I just, make it to my mailbox down the driveway and back. And I felt so accomplished and exhausted, but then I would try to make it to the next driveway, my neighbor and back. And it's just, I knew what I could do, and I stretched a little bit more. I challenged myself a little more each time. And a year after leaving the hospital from the bacteria, from the meningitis, I was running another marathon again. And this time it was my PR, first sub 4 hour marathon, and I couldn't see or hear it.
Wow.
And that just, like I said, it just kind of snowballs. It builds, that inertia, that momentum. It builds it builds on itself. And then I was running faster marathons, running longer. I started doing ultra marathons. In 2023, I became the first blind deaf person to finish the Badwater 135, the
Wow.
toughest foot race on earth, to Death Valley and up to the Mount Whitney portal. Uh,
So rad.
and this coming February, I'll be running from the coast of Africa to Mount Kilimanjaro, 270 miles and then 19,000 feet up.
My man. Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
That is amazing.
Yeah, it is amazing. Bodie, you are correct, sir. That is amazing. I love every dang bit of it. And I know we've got a couple of our young men with hands up too, and I want to bring them in. I want to. What was I have one last one here before I start grabbing these guys in here too. What was the impetus on the podcast part of this too? And I'm going to throw this out because I know this is relatively new, but it's kind of funny. You have got one of your guests here, one of your early guests, is a longtime friend of mine from back when I lived in California, Matty A.
Oh,
Uh,
no way.
yeah, and so he's been on my show. He came in one of the campuses that I built in California when I lived there. He came and spoke to our students. I've been on his show. He's been on ours here as a guest mentor and really good. How did you guys get connected? But then, yeah, the podcast in general, and then, yeah, the Matty A is kind of a one-off on how you guys got connected.
I can tell you right now.
Yeah.
Where in California are you?
So I grew up in the Bay Area, but then I was in the Sacramento area. We moved to
Hmm.
North Carolina 3.5 years ago.
Okay. No, my dad lives in Laguna Beach down south.
Okay. Yep.
So
Yep.
I actually went to second grade out there.
Gotcha.
But
Yep.
but I can't recall how we were connected.
That's so funny. That's awesome. Yeah, Matt's a good guy, man. Good husband, good
Yeah.
father, brilliant, obviously brilliant real estate investor, brilliant guy, good human.
Oh,
But yeah,
amazing guy.
yeah. The impetus for the podcast in general. What was it that made you want to rock that?
Oh, you know what? The Go Abundance.
Yeah, oh yeah, man. I know the Go Abundance guys and Tim and I mean,
Yeah, I
yeah,
was on Tribe of Millionaires, Jamie Gruber.
Gruber's been on with
That's
us.
that is the connection right there.
Got it. Yeah, and that makes sense with Maddie. Yeah, yeah. I know all the Go Abundance guys too. So yeah, so cool. So cool. Well, I'm glad that you've got uh, a podcast out there too. I really am. I think you driving some of these conversations with these guys too. I can't wait to dive in. Uh,
Incredible people.
isn't it the best? Isn't it the best to get to do that every? I mean, it is the best. We get to do this every week and bring people in like you. Like this is, it's the best. You know, outside of my family that I get to lead and love. I mean, it's the most fun I get to have all week. I love it so much.
Everybody needs a podcast, and in fact, that's part of the reason I started one because I didn't want to be the only guy without.
I love, I love it. Well, I'm going to introduce you to a couple of our amazing young men. Tate, let's bring you in here, sir.
Thank you, sir, for coming on the call today. I really do appreciate it. My question for you is, how would you define maturity?
Mm,
Mm. Maturity is looking forward, and it's accepting responsibility. I fought responsibility for so long, and I sought out enjoyment rather than responsibility. And the thing is, it's like Jocko, that discipline equals freedom type of thing. I wanted the freedom without the discipline. And what happens is, I got, the short term, the short term happy feelings, but then the long term regret. And what I needed was the long view of my life. And it takes time. That's why it's called maturity, because it's a transition. You mature. It's a more of a verb than a noun or an adjective, right? It's a transition. I just fought the transition from childhood to manhood.
Yep, I think that's brilliant. And Tate, one of the things, what he's saying right there, I couldn't agree more. It's, when you're leaning into what you have to do and what you need to do over what you want to do, right? That's it. And one of the things Mr. Hale was talking about earlier, he's talking about being thrust in to these various roles, right? These being thrust in to all these responsibilities and then having to catch up. And then he signs up for the marathon and has to figure it out. And I think there's an element of when you really do start to mature, you make the decision to thrust yourself into what has to be done and what needs to be done, even if it means you got to figure it out along the way. I really think that's a big part. I like that question.
To be, to use a military term, situational awareness.
Yeah.
And it's recognizing what's going on around you, and then you're debating your decision making process on how you'll react to the environment, what's going on, the situation, and then recognizing how your actions will affect the people around you in the situation. That's situational awareness. So if you imagine like a toddler having a tantrum and totally selfish, it's understandable, but about how they feel about something and no situational awareness, right? About anybody else. But then as you grow, as you mature, it's realizing that it was like me in the hospital in Walter Reed, and I could have been immature, I could have been angry and mad forever, and just depressed about my situation alone. But I realized what my family was going through, what those other warriors were going through, and my role in their world. It's not a heliocentric universe. But
Yeah, I like that. That was solid. There you go, Tate. What do you think about that?
Awesome. That was a great answer.
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Ellis class.
You guys hear me?
Yes, sir. We have you.
Perfect. Well, Mr. Hale, I'm Ellis. And I just want to first off say thank you so much, sir, for serving this country and the sacrifice that you made for all of us young men. Really appreciate it. And it's very, very honorable. And thank you for taking the time to come on this call and share your story, man. Appreciate it.
You're welcome, and you're worth it.
Thank you. Question for you. What was it that pushed you forward through some of the hardest moments of grief? Because you said, of course, everybody's got to make it through that point and get beyond that. But what was it that helped you push forward through that?
Sorry, I didn't get all that.
It was more along the lines of you're going through those stages of grief and kind of going through those textbook stages. What was it that was kind of helping you push you through each one of those stages? Was it the community? Was it kind of like what was it for you, or was it different at every stage? Like what was the kind of the through line there?
Yeah, it was definitely not something that I recognized in the moment because I was busy experiencing the moment. It was more of a hindsight thing. Yeah, I was and I had and I don't even know what the stages are in order, but I can tell you I denied it. I said, no, we can, my eyesight will come back. Man, my eyeballs weren't even there. But if for some reason I still thought in my mind, my TBI, concussed mind, I thought I was going to get my eyesight back. So I just wasn't going to, focus. I wasn't going to admit that I was blind. The anger, the depression, what is it, bartering, all that stuff. If I could just get my eyesight back, I won't, I won't pee in the shower anymore. I don't know.
Yeah. Yep.
But yeah, but the thing is, like, what helped me to not, I don't know if I ever recognized it in the moment, but what helped me get through each of them were my missing family, my mother, uh, my younger brother, 6 years younger than me. He'd actually gone through a horrible life, crippling accident. It was a roadside construction accident. So I walked in, my mom walked into the hospital for the first time, and she had this bright voice, "Hi, honey," and first thing I thought was, "Oh, Mom, I'm so sorry I did this to your other son," and I was so sad. I felt so guilty because I damaged her other son, and she's like, "Oh, honey, not my first rodeo." And that was my mom, right? And she was being a mom. And I had my sister was pediatric ICU nurse. And like she was like Nurse Cratchit to the other the whole staff who actually worked there. She was translating the jargon, and she was like, "Oh no, you're gonna need to order this and you need to do that, and I need somebody in here." And she was like running the show. So, and then there was actually a team leader, another EOD tech, who had just gotten injured 2 weeks before me in my company. One of my good friends, he was just down the hall. So he wheels up, he's shy of 1 foot now, but man, he was he had just as great a sense of humor as he ever had, and he helped me find mine again. And all that support helped me get through the stages and to acceptance. And then even looking forward, it started to get, to that point where I was ready to do the hard work.
That's really good. What do you think, Mr. Class?
Wow, that's amazing. Again, thank you, sir. That's awesome. You're a hero to this country.
Very much so. Very much so. And then Mr. Schott, you'll have the last one from, or no, it'll go Mr. Schott and then Mr. Ward.
I would just like to start off by saying, sir, you are an amazing person who has done and is doing amazing things. Thank you for your time. And just like, if you could say one thing to someone, like a young man, what would it be?
What was the question? I'm sorry.
If you had just one sentence to give young men in general, what does that look like? What do you think that sentence is that young men need to hear?
Well, I guess respond to what you said earlier, is that I'm not amazing. I'm not extraordinary. I'm not any superhero or anything like that. I'm not. I'm an average Joe. I'm you. I am every one of you. Each one of you has the ability to do and accomplish so much, and you
Mhm.
don't have to get blown up to do it.
Mhm.
I told you in the beginning, I was the all-American slacker, but
Mhm.
you can choose to do amazing things, do things that allow yourself to, we look through this window of life,
Mhm.
and all you got to do is open the curtains a little bit wider, right?
Mhm.
Reach just a little bit further. What if you added a zero to the reps or the bank account, or what if you added another mile to what you think you can do, the distance you can go? What if you just thought a little bit, you stretched a little bit further, thought bigger, and then work towards that? I
That's
bet
right.
you anything you can get there. I
That's
know
right.
you can.
That is right. Yeah, that's a Mr. Shaw. I'm telling you, that's advice that's not just relevant to you as a young man, but it's relevant to all the men on here too, because that's a conversation that we have with grown men over and over and over too. And I always frame it as, man, you're under no obligation to be. You really are obligated not to live the same year twice and pretend that you're calling that a life, but man, you're under no obligation to be the same person you were 5 minutes ago. You can be a better version. You just get to make that decision, and you got to make it on a daily basis. I love what Mr. Hale just said right there.
We didn't talk about this at all, but after we started the fudge business, I tell people we sell chocolate to buy rentals, and started a whole, like, I sold a whole real estate business from selling fudge. But I never thought of that. And I invest in out of state properties I've never seen. I've never walked into any of these properties before I've actually bought them. And
Mhm.
I don't swing a hammer. I don't manage it. I don't do any of that stuff. And I mean, it was completely outside my scope of imagination before I lost my eyesight, but I just
Mhm.
figured out how. I have a friend who kind of taught me the ropes, but he started a whole, what are those TV shows, like renovation, like the fix and flip type of things. But
Yeah.
the show's called Kids Who Flip. And it's teenagers who are doing these amazing fix and flip jobs. They're doing it, and they're doing it as teenagers.
So
It's
cool.
I know
it's
him,
amazing.
Phil Allen. He's amazing. I was in his program.
Hmm, no kidding.
Yeah,
How
Small
I'm
cool.
world.
studying with him. He took me up in his plane once on his podcast. He's really cool.
How cool, man. How cool. No, I love that. Yeah. So hopefully that helps, Mr. Shot.
Thank you so much.
Small world.
Yeah, it always is. And then we'll get the last one from external before we want to make sure we honor time here too, but we'll go over there to Mr. Ward.
Hello. I just wanted to say first, thank you for coming on today. So my question is, what was your motivation to keep pushing through everything that happened?
You know, motivation's a tricky word. Motivation's like a sugar high,
Mm,
right? Motivation gets you started. But it's inspiration, aspiration, it's discipline that builds up that inertia, builds up the momentum, right? You know, so, but I understand what the question. I understand what you mean, and the truth is, it was that sense of duty, that the external, that extrinsic value. After I hung up the uniform, I still felt a soldier at heart. I was still an EOD tech, still among that family, that brotherhood. I, of course, I have a family, three sons that I'm responsible for, but I'm also responsible to. So I'm still a dad, and I need to show them how to be a man, especially in hard times. So I had to figure it out for them, and I had to be my best. I consider it an ethical and moral imperative that I'm always doing my best so that I can show them that there are no good excuses. Reasons are learning points so that you don't fail the same way 2 times in a row. But excuses are lies you tell yourself to get yourself off the hook from responsibility.
That's right. Nailed it. Nailed it. What do you think, sir?
Thank you.
Awesome.
Mm.
You know, you know, Aaron, you got, obviously, you know, is there an amazing story attached? Sure. But what I am just grateful for the most is just being a good man. Story, you know, the story is exactly what you want it to be, and the way you're creating it, and you're continuing to create it. And the intentionality is as a father, and the intentionality as a leader, and as an entrepreneur. And you know, I just, all the respect in the world for that, man. Truly, it's just, I want more. That's the point of what we do here, and helping lead these young men so they can come with that intentionality, and realize they get to make the choice on that. I'm going to take these guys through a debrief exercise after this. And obviously we want to put this out to the world as well too. So I want to make sure we do right by it. Where do you know, last 2 questions for us, like, where do you want people to go to follow along with what you have going on? But the most important question is, how does the entire Apogee organization best support you and your family? Is there anything we can do on that? So those are the last 2 on our side. Where can folks go to learn more and follow along with what you got going? And how do we best come alongside you as family?
Well, you can find me on all the platform, podcast platforms, but definitely on YouTube, Point of Impact. And you can see a blind deaf guy try to interview other people who are amazing and doing some incredible stuff in life. Also, I'm on social media, Point of Impact, and Aaron Hale, A. Clay Hale, I think it is, on the social media platforms. So you can follow along. Facebook is my big platform. I try to do Instagram, but it's not that whole visual based stuff.
Yeah.
But I want to tell you, this is an incredible group of young men. There's great questions. I'm also trying to stretch this out because I've got a long run, 18 miles into. So
What a stud. Oh, what a stud. No, it's awesome, man. Aaron, I just, again, one of just Apogee man through and through. You know, we talk about the Bushido code over here incessantly, and that is just something that I see I see you living day in and day out. And the intentionality, again, is just something that not only these young men need to hear, but the men need to hear too. And I mean it, coming alongside you however we can. Obviously, we'll get this out to everybody, but I'll reach out, and I got some things I'd love to send to your family too, and boys, just as a thank you. And again, we're here to support in any and every way, man. So thank you for the work you're doing, brother.
Thank you for having me on. It was a lot of fun, and you got, like I said, this is an incredible crowd. So you guys are doing a great job. Keep it up.
Thank you for that, brother. Thank you. I will reach out here shortly, and make sure we touch base, and keep the conversation going.
Zang.
Awesome. Thanks, Aaron.